Scrapbooking.com magazine presents the following Basic Techniques article from the August 2011 issue. Square 1, Hand Overdyed Threads on Cardstock, Part 2, by author and artist Judy Kaufman. Last month I outlined the basic techniques for stitching with hand overdyed threads on cardstock. This month, let's continue with 3 more projects. The first one shows how to create thread patterns within mini-sized die cuts. No piercing is required for the mini starbursts. You'll be using the holes that are already built into the die cuts for counting the pattern progressions. Next up, a drawing of a flower that combines coloring and stitching. French knots and fringe stitches add texture and dimension. You can create your own original drawing, use copyright-free clip art, or use the flower I've provided as a starting point if you prefer to duplicate the project as shown. The third project shows how to wind hand-overdyed threads around a pre-made chipboard shape. In this case it's a spool, but you could wrap other shapes using the same method. This is a super easy project with simple running stitch touches at the edges and along the veins in the leaves. Small die-cut shapes like these mini geos are easily enhanced with hand-overdyed floss. This pair of motifs was cut with a 2-pattern die. Instructions and the backing shape come with the die. Once you fold in and tuck the design into position, thread a needle and bring it through the holes to create a pattern. Use 1 strand of floss for the more intricate design, bringing it up every 9 holes. For this motif, follow the manufacturer's instructions for cutting the shape twice to double the number of pattern elements. Use 3 strands of floss for the simpler pattern, the one that is die cut once, bringing the floss directly across the motif each time for a total of 6 long lines that cross in the center. For added dimension, place the finished motifs onto adhesive back foam when attaching them to the backing shape. There's no need to pierce holes for this project. The holes already exist in the die-cut motifs. You can use the motifs on card fronts as shown, or as you prefer. Spell out greetings with alphabet stickers and add die-cut tabs, brads, and corners to complete the projects. Simple hand-drawn or hand-stamped images like flowers and leaves are a great starting point for stitching. You can stitch around the edges of the images, covering or enhancing the lines, or create longer stitches that partially fill the shapes. You can also create precise or random background patterns. To use the black and white flower pattern provided, size it to your preference and print it onto smooth, heavyweight white cardstock. Color before stitching. I chose pens containing intensely pigmented ink and equally bright threads. For a softer look, choose muted hand-overdyed threads and substitute watercolors, colored pencils, or pens that can be used with a blender. Whether you draw by hand as I did or use a stamp, be sure to use a permanent ink pen or ink pad and make sure the image is thoroughly dry before starting to stitch. Pierce all holes while the project is face up. Use the sample as a reference. Trust your eye and the shapes in the design when deciding where stitches will go. For this last project, I thought it would be fun to wrap a die-cut chipboard spool to look like it contains hand-overdyed sewing thread. To ensure that this card can be enjoyed for a long time, I added a calendar pad that can be easily replaced at the start of a new year. First, sponge ink onto a chipboard spool. Stamp with a wood grain pattern stamp or hand draw the wood grain with a marker. Sand a piece of Victorian velvet cardstock. Then sand a piece of cardstock with an embossed lacy pattern, layering onto the backing. Add a narrow border to a purchased or computer-generated calendar pad. Wrap hand-overdyed 6-strand floss around the spool, securing at both ends at the back of the shape with glue or tape. Using a piece of 10-count plastic canvas as a piercing template, pierce 14 holes in each direction at all 4 corners of the embossed cardstock. Next, attach the die-cut leaves, spool, and calendar pad. Stitch along the embossed lines in some of the leaves, adding running stitches at the corners. Punch a hanging hole at the top center of the calendar and you're done. A printable project card with instructions and a list of supplies can be found by clicking on the step-by-step instructions link within this article. To find the products featured in this article and shown in these layouts, check with your local scrapbook retailer. Browse our premier retail stores for coupons to a store near you. We hope you've enjoyed this article from Scrapbooking.com magazine. For more creative inspiration, be sure to check out all of the great articles and projects in this month's issue.